Okay, so I think we'll get started. It's just 3 o'clock, so we'll crack on. We're going to be recording the session, so anybody that joins us a bit later can just view it at leisure. So hello everyone, very warm welcome to the third of our platform webinars. Today we are going to be giving an overview of IT discovery data sources, and particularly we're going to give a demonstration of our discovery option that we ourselves at License Dashboard provide as part of our platform. There is a broad international presence on the session today, so a huge thanks to everyone across the pond for joining us so early in their day, and of course to our European cousins for making the time too, but of course it's much later in their schedules. My name is David Chamberlain. I head up the product and delivery team here at License Dashboard, and I'm joined by my colleagues Ben Eagling, our marketing manager, and Gary Smith, who's going to be doing the demonstration. He's our global product manager for all of our platform solutions. The session should be completed well within 25 minutes, and whilst we'll unmute for the standard Q&A session at the end, please feel free to make full use of the chat facility. Both Ben and I are going to closely monitor that, so if any questions crop up as we go, then please feel free to raise them on the fly. As with all the sessions, and as I mentioned, we're going to be recording this webinar, and we will make it available to everybody at the end, so you can review at leisure for anything that might pique your interest. So here's today's quickfire agenda for the webinar. Hopefully this fits in with everyone's expectations and is it what you all signed up for. We're basically here to discuss the broad basics of discovery systems, minimal requirements to get you up and running, along with a couple of gotchas, things that you might like to look out for or consider, especially if you've got a diversity of systems. Then we've got a couple of slides that hopefully position where LD discovery fits in within that end-to-end technology asset management jigsaw, and then a bit of an overview of what each piece in that jigsaw puzzle does, and crucially what it doesn't do. Hopefully this is going to give you some food for thought as to whether you have any existing capability or infrastructure you can immediately leverage that might plug some of those gaps of the puzzle, but also one or two areas you might not have considered as yet. Okay, so let's crack on. What is the minimum we should really be looking for from a discovery tool beyond the basics of deployment and hardware information? Well, many tools are quite broad in their methods of capture, but we'll do a sterling job of returning the basics, such as desktop applications and operating systems, as well as the standard hardware attributes about the assets on which they are deployed. But it's crucial to ensure that the full picture is being captured, especially for high-risk, high-end database products or deployments in the data center. The method of capture can also vary. Many tools require an agent to be deployed, which might not suit all of your environments. This is a huge consideration. Agent conflicts or updates can require system reboots, which isn't exactly desirable for servers, or even affect performance of endpoints. The plus side of agent deployments is the ability to look at hidden folders to forensically understand what is deployed, and not just software installed using MSI media. So the presence or absence of an executable file can generally be determined by an agent-based install, which allows you to also validate assumptions made from add and remove programs, that deployments are actually valid and not just partially uninstalled. Also gives a huge advantage of facilitating metering data and understanding of actual usage of product. If you go for an agent-based deployment, either partially or full, and that hybrid is entirely possible and often recommended to have that kind of mixture of agent and agentless based, do be sure that there will be little impact on the device, especially on startup. It's crucial that scans can be sensibly scheduled and only incremental changes transmitted to the discovery server, and that those communications are both secure for network devices and remote devices, those that might need to report in over HTTPS or via VPN. It's also essential to understand the extent of your unknown, which devices haven't been inventoried, or even which folders on the devices that have not been scanned or have not been able to be scanned. Over the course of our 15 years in the SAM industry, we constantly hear so many tales and scare stories relating to those simple oversights. The most recent one was a conversation Ben and I had with somebody about An organisation that had over 99% tool coverage had just overlooked only 5 single Linux devices, but these devices each had over $400,000 worth of software installed. Of course, the vendor's auditors discovered these and did not care whether they were actively in use or not. So, continuing with that full picture theme, so technological advances, innovation, digital transformation, etc., make today's IT landscapes more diverse and varied than ever. And of course, methods of discovery needed to adapt and evolve too. Firstly, we need to address multiple platforms. Even if Wintel is over 90% of your estate, we know that that final 5 or 10% has the potential to be huge in terms of risk. Secondly, we need to know what the vendor is actually looking for. What do they look for? What do they forensically understand from your systems? Many of them have their own proprietary methods of usage capture that can cast doubts over the suitability or value of any other system. Breadth of capability is not the same as depth of capability. Whilst invisible usage via Citrix, RDS and VDI have been challenges for over a decade, the data center itself has proven most recently to be that biggest area of risk, and many tools still fail to capture the extended liability of software as a result of mobility potential in this arena. Of course, now we also have the cloud, either in the form of infrastructure as a service or software as a service, that pay-as-you-go compute that sounds like the holy grail answer to compliance headaches. In simple terms, yes it is, fully migrated and adopted, you can't be non-compliant, but only if you are fully migrated and fully adopted. The journey there requires you to balance both on-premise and cloud, the transition causing continuous pain for hybrid use licenses and physical deployments. And when you've completed that journey, if you can indeed ever complete that journey, bear in mind compliance is just a byproduct of good software asset management. And the focus of SAM in that respect switches to cost containment, ensuring we're constantly challenging the SaaS bill and looking for reductions through right sizing. So here at LD, we take a wholly tool-agnostic approach in respect to the tool. Makes no sense forcing a second or third client onto a device unnecessarily. There's an unseen cost and effort to roll out and maintain, conflicts between agents, additional network traffic, and device resource requirement, and of course, discovery tool cost itself. We do connect into existing infrastructure wherever possible. We also connect into vendor proprietary tools and APIs, and simply plug the gaps with agent-based or agentless discovery. If you have no tool, these gaps may be estate-wide. It might just be your server estate where you don't wish to deploy a physical agent. You might be transitioning from one deployment solution to another and require an interim short-term solution. You might even be mid-acquisition and require a very quick discovery option as part of your due diligence process. Again, that might just be a short-term requirement. No customer, in our experience, is ever the same, and none have carbon copy needs. Often discovery is required to be tactical or strategic, and discovery as part of our platform offers the agility to accommodate all unique customer scenarios. But Gary is about to show you our agent-based discovery for the Wintel platform. Naturally, it's going to have all the prerequisites I've mentioned. It's going to have the ability to capture hardware, software information, SQL additions. I don't want to steal his thunder too much, but the beauty is in its simplicity. So I'm just going to hand straight over to Gary now.
Hello everyone. So as David said, I'm Gary, and I'm going to demonstrate our licensed dashboard discovery product. Dashboard Discover is designed to be a simple, effective and low maintenance discovery and inventory solution. As David mentioned, it's agent-based and it's for the Windows platform, and it collects all of the standard hardware and software attributes what you generally require for the SAM projects. The agent itself is pretty small, taking up less than 30 megabytes of RAM, and there's low CPU usage when idle, which is most of the time. Metering is the only constantly active component of Discovery, which uses less than 0.1% CPU utilization, and it's recording every start and stop of executables. Discovery works on any version of Windows which you can install .NET 2.0 or later on, so there's quite a broad scope there. On the server side, for the installation, it needs Windows Server 2008 or later and SQL Server 2008 or later. That can be full SQL or Express editions. What you see on the screen is the home page of Discovery. You've got on the left-hand side, you have the workspaces, and then in the center of the screen you have the general area for what's been displayed for that workspace. We'll do a quick run through of the current workspace on the screen, which is the home screen. We see the license summary, which is just information about the license key installed and how many are in use. In the center we've got the inventory summary, which shows the total number of devices which are have been inventoried, how many are active, how many are inactive. We've got the agent communication. That will show you how many agents have communicated today. And in the past, we can see in this is actually a cut from a live demo environment, and it's been offline for about 2 weeks. We've only got one machine currently talking, which we can see is contacted today. The rest we can see has been within 4 weeks because it was disconnected about 2 weeks ago. We can see the summary of device types. So we can see servers, desktops, and laptops. See the big majority here is desktops, but we can also got a large selection of servers there as well. Got information about the agent information, so most of them are on the current version, but we can see we've got a few stragglers back on some older versions which haven't been upgraded as yet. In the OS distribution, you can get a general idea of the operating systems deployed, and in this environment we see the vast majority are Windows 10 Enterprise, and most of these machines are physical, with about a third of those machines being virtual. That's the home screen. If I flick across to the devices screen, we'll see a tabular list of the devices which have been inventoried. A device can be either active or decommissioned. So what that means is if a device hasn't been seen on the network for a given period of time, it will become automatically decommissioned. And the final column on the right-hand side, we can see that it's filtered by default to only show you active machines. On this screen, we can see the domain, the device, the operating system and service pack, device type, whether it's physical or virtual, and if it's virtual, the type of virtual instance. So these are VMware virtual machines. We can see the IP address, and this is the IP address at which the agent has communicated with the server. So a machine can have multiple IP addresses, but only one of those will be used to communicate with the server. If I click on the sort, each of these headers are sortable, we can see this top machine is communicated over IPv6. So we record the IP address which was used to communicate with the server. We've got the last upload time, which is the last time that agent has uploaded any data, and the last contact time of when there's been any communication at all from that agent to the server, as well as the agent version.
What are the different reasons for last upload times then? Why have we got such a variety of the last upload times?
So when an agent communicates with a server, any type of communication will update the last contact time, but the last upload time is the last time it's uploaded any data at all. Mm-hmm. So there's different schedules for, say, like hardware scans, software scans, and so on, and so they'll come up at different times. It's naturally randomized, so there's not a lot of machines all uploading data all at the same time, so that will reduce the load on the server. Within here, we can go and filter on any of these columns. The filters we can say it's equal, contains, starts with, or ends with. So if I just pull up a particular machine, so this is a machine I know. So we can see the device name, the operating system. If we click on this drop down, we've got we can see that we've got one option, we can deactivate a device. So if a device is no longer on the network because it's been lost or stolen or handed back in, we can manually deactivate those. If you deactivate a device and it then communicates on the network again, it will come back to life within here. So it's all part of the Inactive Device Management Facility. Click on Details, we'll go and see information about that device. It defaults to showing the hardware data for this device. And we can see this one's a Sony machine. We've got one CPU, 4 logical. Look at the CPU details, I can see it's an Intel Core i7. I can see there are 2 cores per CPU and 4 logical. So with 1 CPU, 2 cores and 4, so we know it's a machine with hyper-threading enabled. We can see the disk partition information and the logical disks on there. So we've just got 1 drive, it's a C drive. You can see how many the free disk space within there. So we get the standard types of information which you'd expect to see. And we can see on this instance, I was the last logged on user on that device. Or more specifically, I was logged on to that device when the inventory was done. Within a device, we can also see things like the exceptions. This is any instance during any of the, say like the file scan on the hard disk, which it was unable to perform. Just click on it. It'll show us, for instance here, access to the path for this path was denied. So this looks a little bit dubious. Portable, so with things like portable apps, most likely they could be like cracked software, as an example. Users can deny access to, say, like the system account, which means that agents on a machine can be denied access to folders, so are unable to scan it. So in that instance, we could say that we probably should investigate why there's a folder on there which can't be scanned, because there could be software hidden in there.
So you're saying you could just drop in an executable and somebody could run it from that location without us knowing? Absolutely. So there'd be no reference to that. It's not something which would be installed, and it would just be copied onto the machine. So at the moment, the image solution is unaware of what's on there, but if somebody sat on the machine and looked at that folder, they'd see there's a folder there, but it hadn't been scanned. But that wouldn't come through the add and remove programs?
It wouldn't appear in add and remove programs.
Right, okay.
Portable applications tend to be things where you can just copy the files onto a USB stick or onto a disk and then just run them. Okay. The installed software, this is a list of the add and remove programs on that machine. Software usage is the metering data, which I'll come back into a bit more details when I talk about the reports, but it'll show you the applications when there was first used and last used. We've got the executable data, which is from the full file scan on the machine. It's all of the executable files on the machine across all of the folders. Got the product keys, and this is showing you the product key which was used to install Windows 10. Now this is the encoding product ID, so you can't use this to reinstall the application, but when we see the reports, we can see it can be useful to know that information. And then finally, we've got the SQL additions. If we go and look at the reports, which are available in here, we've got the device type report, which will show us the breakdowns of machines, so we can see physical desktops, we've got 85. We've got 1 VDI machine in there, 3 laptops, and so on. Clicking on details for there will go and show you those actual devices. In the installed software summary, this is an overview of all of the add and remove program data. It's an aggregation across all of the machines. So for instance, we can see this Catalyst Control Center. It said there's 2 installs, and if we click on that, we can see the 2 machines with that software installed.
Is that all exportable, Gary?
Yeah, so all of these grids, you can see in the top right-hand corner, there's a export icon, so clicking on that will export to Excel. In the operating system summary, we can see the breakdown of operating systems across the network. Product keys This, as mentioned, shows the product key which was used to deploy the software, and can be important to know which media was used. So we can see for this Windows Server 2012 standard, this product ID was used across those, so we know the same media was used for all of those machines. Software usage is the aggregation of the metering information. If we look at this Adobe Acrobat Pro software here, we can see that 6 machines have used it within 90 days. 1 machine has used it, but it's over 90 days. And there's 5 machines which have it installed but have not used it. So if we click on that, we can see the rows which are blank. They're the machines which have it installed but have not been used. And the other ones, we can actually see that when it was first used, when it was last used, how long it's been used for, and how many times it's been started on those machines.
Can you just say that? What's duration and invokes for?
So duration is the time the application's been open for on those machines, and evokes is how many times the application has been started on a machine.
Right, so somebody could have clicked it half a dozen times but not actually done anything within the product itself.
Yeah, you can find some applications are open for a long time but have only been invoked once. So for instance, like Microsoft Outlook, you tend to open it at the start of the day and then you sort of close it when you log off. While other applications, such as maybe like a web browser, you tend to start it and stop it a lot of times during the day, and that'll show you how long they've been open for.
Great. And what you're showing here is all products that are being metered.
That's right, yeah. So I'll talk a little bit when I get to the server agent configuration about the metering, how it can be configured, but it meters everything by default.
But you could exclude folders, etc., if you wanted to.
You can exclude certain folders. System folders, such as Windows System 32X, are excluded by default, but others can be added there as well. Okay. The SQL edition summary, this shows you the SQL Server versions and editions which are installed across the network, and these are important for finding out for a SAM solution about which edition needs to be licensed. So the standard add remove programs information will tell you that the SQL Server is installed in the version, but it won't tell you the edition. So this goes away and finds out on those machines what those editions are. For the agents, there's several scan types which are all scheduled individually. So the exe file scan does exactly what it sounds like. It scans the file system for exe files. We've got a hardware scan, which uses WMI to query the machine for hardware information. That's extensible as well, so you can, if there's something in WMI you want to have which it's not currently scanning, the WMI query can be added to the database and it will start automatically collecting that information and storing that in the database.
What kind of things would that be?
There's a huge amount of information stored in WMI, and if there's something specific which you wanted in there which it isn't currently collected, then we can sort of work with customers to help them add that into their database.
You mean things like Dell and Quest keys and stuff like that?
Yeah, if it's accessible via WMI, I mean, there is tens of thousands of attributes which are potentially collectible within there, which are exposed via WMI, and so we can add those in. The configuration is how often the agent connects to the machine to download the latest updated configuration. Installed software scan, add, remove programs. Software usage is the metering. MSI exe scan is a special scan used by the system itself, and it looks at the MSIs, and for any given MSI, what executables that's then installed onto the machine. It allows us to tie the metering data to add remove program data within here to show a more friendly view of the metering information. We then have the SQL edition scan. The sender surface is how often it checks to see if there's anything to be uploaded to the server, and the agent update is to do with the automatic updates for agents. The exe scan has exclusions, so if there's particular folders where it shouldn't be scanned, they can be added into here. This is where the path contains this value. So if it starts with a colon, such as this, it would mean any drive letters, but in the root. So C colon backslash recycler and D colon backslash recycler will both be excluded by that line. In the IP settings, this is the URL which will be used by the agents to connect to the server. So if this needs to be published out to the internet, so there's going to be some devices coming across the internet from remote sites or coming across a VPN, additional URLs can be added in here, and the agents will try them in order to find the first working URL which is available to them. If a machine is offline at the time, any results will be kept locally, and the next time the connection to the server becomes available, it will automatically then upload those results. Metering scan. This is where you can exclude particular paths. So that, as mentioned, the Windows paths are excluded, system paths are excluded by default. And then you can also exclude users. So certain users on the system you probably don't want to see information for. This would generally be you want to see the user who's actually logged onto the machine starting things. If the system starts something, it's generally less important to know that. Additional exclusions can be added to there. By default, it will only meter workstations, because that's generally where we want to see the information for, rather than metering servers, but servers can be metered if needed as well. Server configuration, there's not much to configure. You've got your license key you can add in, and then there's the inactive periods management. And this is how long from an inactivity from a machine it's flagged as deactivated. So in the default settings here we've got 2 months. So if a machine hasn't been seen for 2 months, it'll be flagged as inactive. If that machine comes back online again, it will automatically be flagged as active again. If after 6 months of it's not been seen, then that will get deleted from the system, and the metering data is automatically deleted after it's 6 months old. So when it comes to deploying the agents for discovery, the main way to do that would be using Active Directory Group Policy. Because the client agent is an MSI file, it's very easy to use Active Directory Group Policy to push that agent onto machines. Also, third-party systems such as PDQ Deploy, which is a small solution for pushing out MSI installs, again, can be used. And there's also a built-in push deployment. Now, the push deployment in this instance does require that it can actually get an SMB share onto the machine, so like a file share onto the machine, and has remote WMI access. So if there's firewalls in place, that can be challenging, which is why group policy is usually recommended, because it doesn't matter if the firewall's on for group policy deployment, it will be able to push it out. For agent deployment, if you're using the push install, within domain configuration, you can configure your domains. So in this test environment, I've got a VMD domain. Within here, we specify the domain, the IP address of the domain controller, how frequently it should be updated, and there's some credentials. These are the credentials which will be used to also push the agent onto the machine as well. So it needs to be a user account what has the right permissions to the workstations as well. And once it's populated, this populates the push install screen. In here we have, we can see machines where they've got an agent installed already, and the was seen refers to, was the server able to ping that machine? So has it actually been seen as active on the network? And for these we can filter, so we can see these have been seen. If we filter to doesn't have an agent installed, then we can see in this list machines we could deploy to. We can either select on the right-hand side which machines we want to deploy and click on Install Selected, or we can also, if I just find one particular machine, which is one I know is actively in the test environment, we can see there's no agent and it has been seen, and there's an option then in here just to push to an individual machine. So we click on install. We can see the status has come back connected to a remote machine. So it's in the background is now pushing the agent onto that machine. If I give it a few moments and then refresh, clear that filter. You can now see on this machine the agent's being pushed onto that machine. Now if I go back to devices and look at that machine, we can see already we have a little bit of information about the machine itself. We can know the operating system, for instance, and that it's a server. If I click on details though, most of these will be blank because those inventories are yet for those machines. And that's, in a nutshell, is discovery. And I'll hand back to David.
Brilliant, Gary. Thank you very much. It's nice to see under the bonnet. Okay, so just to recap where we've got to today. So Gary was showing you our agent-based Wintel discovery solution, License Dashboard Discovery. Naturally, he's going to cover off the prerequisites we mentioned earlier in the webinar, the good things to have as part and parcel of being a discovery tool, which is detailed hardware and software inventories, be able to show you your agent-based discovery for the Wintel platform, things like SQL additions, executable and MSI discovery, metering, license keys, product IDs. But its beauty really is in its simplicity. I mean, it's designed to be easy to maintain and manage. It's got a very low impact on endpoints and network bandwidth. Crucially, it also offers the ability of targeted metering. So that's both at a product level, by default it gives you everything, but also you're able to target asset types, so whether you want to meter servers or workstations. And that's crucial if you don't want to be swamped by noise about apps you don't care about because you need them deployed anyway, or if you don't want to monitor servers. Of course, it can report securely over the network via HTTPS and has a standalone scan option as well, Gary, I believe?
That's right. There's a separate standalone scanner which can be used for disconnected machines.
Super. But the simplicity of the product and the fact that it's purely a discovery system with the sole aim of plugging the gaps of where you don't have an answer is reflected in its pricing, and that can be obtained from your account manager upon request. So, big thank you for attending today's WebEx. I do hope you found it useful. I'm just going to try and find a way of opening up the mics and open everything for any questions whilst we still have Gary here.
I do have one question.
Yes, of course.
I'm curious as to whether you have any plans in your roadmap to have a discovery client for the Mac platform.
It certainly is something that we are looking at. At the moment, we do have a connector for Casper. So if you have Casper collecting any data for your Macintosh, we can pull the data in directly from that system if you already have that. We do have a partnership with an organization called Landsweeper, and Landsweeper certainly are able to do things like Linux, Unix, and Macintosh. It's an agentless discovery system, but certainly it's something in our roadmap. But currently, that roadmap would probably be not in the near term. It would probably be 6 to 12 months before we start to look at putting that in the discovery tool. Super. Well, I hope that answered the question. I guess that's probably it for today. Like I said, the next call to action is if you're interested in hearing more about discovery, please reach out to your account managers. We will make sure that this webinar is available to you if you want to review anything. And of course, if any queries come out, I do see we've got some existing discovery users on the call as well. If anything's piqued your interest and you want any technical support or advice on how to do something within the application, then again, please reach out to support@licensedashboard.com, and of course, we'll be very happy to help. So yeah, we're probably a little bit more than the 25 minutes I promised you, and apologies for that. I did interrupt Gary a number of times, but thank you very much for your time today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.